you, everyone. I'd like to call to order the special common council meeting. Today is Tuesday, May 17th, and the time is 7:10. We are starting a little bit late. The meeting notices were mailed and posted. I'll turn to our city clerk for the roll call.
Mayor Kim Smith,
Here.
Tom Smith,
Here.
Dan Stevens,
Here.
Stephen Knott. Absent. Leon Stokes.
Here.
Larry Jurassic,
President.
Diane Wolf.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. This would be our last common council meeting dated May 10th.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting. Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Alder Stevens, seconded by Alder Smith to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The minutes are approved. Item 3 is public input. This is the time where members of the public may address the common council. Please begin by stating your name and address and limiting your comments to 3 minutes per individual. Would anyone like to address the common council this evening? Second call, if anyone would like to address the common council. Third and final call for public input this evening. Not seeing or hearing anyone, the public input is now closed and we will move on to item 4.
Your Honor,
Yes,
if I may, Joanne, I'm trying to log on and it says this webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, June 14th. And I got it. So that's what I logged on right now. And I've done it 3 times in a row and it's June 14th.
Okay. Then I might have. June 14th, 22?
The webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, June 14th, starts 7 p.m. on Alaska Common Council. I just thought you should know.
we're paused for a technical difficulty.
I want to see where you.
Sure. And
We're just paused right now for a moment.
So I went to. So I'm going to open the link. And a lot of times I have to go through my process. That's how I was. You go a
To
different way.
me, it would be the Zoom link.
Oh,
It's not what's
right.
supposed to be. Have you tried the Zoom link?
Oh, you do. How do they get on?
Off and try again.
Thank you.
Is it staff members who are on?
So I've got the link.
Oh, Steve's not going to make it. Okay. Okay, thank you. Not going to make it, Steve. Flight's delayed.
It seems to be everyone's sad story.
Thanks, Steve.
When he called them, he texted them. Okay, we have that resolved now. Sorry for the delay. Okay, we're on item 4 of the printed agenda, establishing the council budget goals and objectives for 2023. So I'm not sure who wants to go first. If Eric does,
Center was public input closed?
I believed it was.
Okay.
I
Apologies.
think I started to say 4 when Diane
Okay.
interrupted. Okay, Eric Reinflush, our city administrator. Share your wisdom with us.
I'm handing out a paper copy of a memo, which I'll read in to the record as well. First, congratulations to all the newly elected and re-elected council members. One of the most important policy decisions you will make, and probably the most important policy document you will approve in the coming year, is the 2023 budget. As per our ordinance, it is the responsibility of the city administrator to present to council a budget proposal for the next year. The council then amends and approves that proposal as the official 2023 budget, subject to mayor veto. Over the next 6 months, staff will work diligently to propose a budget to you which meets your goals and objectives and is balanced and as is required by statute. For the process to be successful, I will need the budgetary goals and objectives of the council so that the proposal given to you later this year is as representative of your wishes as possible, as this will ultimately be your 2023 budget. I offer the following general questions to assist with establishing your goals this evening. 1, do you have any new initiatives or staffing requests for 2023 which are not currently in the 2022 budget? 2, are there any current programs in the 2022 budget that you would like to see increased or decreased in 2023? 3, do you have a preferred methodology for implementing those increases and decreases, be it program specific, across the board, or by program or department prioritization? And 4, list any general goal statement you would like the council to use to direct the preparation of the administrator's budget. The current economic environment will make the preparation of the 2023 budget the most difficult one in recent times. The 12-month CPI is extremely high at 8.3% in April, 8.5% in March. Interest rates, while climbing, are still relatively low, making our interest income still minimal. State aids are relatively, oops, I skipped a sentence. State imposed budgetary caps are still in place, levy limits and expenditure restraints being the 2 main ones. State aids are relatively fixed as we are in the 2nd year of the state's biennial budget. While we are still growing, our net new construction will likely not be high. In the general fund, wages and benefits can make up 70 to 80% of the expenditures. All these variables impact the budget that can be passed, and I'm happy to discuss them in greater detail tonight. However, if we were to follow our past budgeting practices, I believe we are already facing a budgetary shortfall in 2023. Therefore, in order to propose a balanced budget, the council should also discuss to what degree should the administrator use the following to present a balanced budget to the council? A, program and service cuts. B, staff reductions. C, reduced COLA adjustments. D, reduced performance pay increases. And or E, revenue enhancements. I look forward to our discussion this evening.
Thank you, sir. How would the council like to proceed? Alder Stevens?
Your Honor, given the nature where there's, this is a chance for alders to give input on their individual thoughts on what the budget should look like as and how to direct the city administrator to form the budget. I'm going to suggest maybe we go round robin and have everybody have their chance to speak their mind.
Would you like to go first?
No, I would not.
Sure.
Hey, do we have a volunteer? Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Alder Stevens, were you thinking that we're just going to do number 1 go around, number 2 go around, or I know last year I thought it was very successful when we did kind of do that, but something tells me though that didn't we have a little bit more discussion? I mean, we just got hit with this cold, so I mean, we haven't really had an opportunity to flush things out and have a little bit more discussion. So, I mean, I'm open to anything, but I know last year when we did, each one of us kind of said what were our most pressing things. So, but I'm game for whatever.
Okay, Eric Reinfleisch.
I think you need to lead us through this.
Hold our hand, Eric.
Well, I threw the hole at you, the budgetary hole at you as a new item this year compared to previous years. I still think it's important to discuss those topics about what your priorities are programs you went funded, there is still much unknown. We don't know health insurance rates. We don't know fuel. We don't know will the state step in and offer anything. So it is vital that even those, is it impossible to increase? Probably not. But if we are able to, where would you like to see those increases? So I still think it's valuable to have those conversations as to what the council would, what the priorities are, what you would like to see, contingent on, obviously our budgetary constraints as we propose. That gives me the greatest guidance. And again, tonight, we're not looking at a balanced budget. There's far too much unknown. We've just started the process. We have 6 months to go before we get there. This is not to balance that budget. It's just to offer the insight so I can present a budget that fits most of your needs.
Okay, hey, Eric, stay there once. Can I start then by asking you if you have any ideas for initiatives that you were hoping to introduce for 2023 that maybe now you're a little more reluctant to bring forward?
For 2022, if I may back up a little bit, the conversation has been to increase staffing in Parks and Rec, in particular in the Recreation Department, Parks Department. That is actually one of the goals we'll be discussing perhaps later on this evening as well, how to do that. If there's any initiative in 2023 is to follow through on that commitment to try to look at ways of increasing that staff. It's been an ongoing goal impacting from the previous round of layoffs. And I think if there's any new initiative, it's really the same initiative, is to find ways to continue forward with that.
Okay, so then maybe if that's kind of like our conversation starter, does anyone else have anything for item 1 in our memo that they would like to share? Alder Wolf?
Sure. So on number 1, any new initiatives or staffing requests for 2023, which are not currently in the 2022 budget? I know, just speaking with staff and such, and hearing reports at various committees, commissions, and boards from staff, I am one that will still be in support and want to see some type of staffing increase for the Parks Department. I don't remember the numbers right offhand, but I think they suffered a 23% decrease in funding in the Parks Department alone. I don't remember if that was over a 2-year period of time, but I know this last budget, that's the number I came up with. I will always be for, I typically past councils, and typically, number 1 seems to be always public safety. But there's a lot of other departments at City Hall that keep City Hall running. And I will always support public safety, but we have to keep in mind that there's a whole lot of other departments that need help also. So I will be speaking very favorably in some type of additional funding for parks. I'm also a little dismayed to hear the continual lots of hours up at the Omni Center. I'd like to see if we could possibly explore. I haven't had a chance to talk to Dan with this at all, so I'm just ad-libbing here. I'd like to possibly hear if there is need for any additional hours or positions or whatever for up at the Omni Center, because it sounds like they're working an awful lot of hours, and the Omni Center is finally in the black, and I would hate to burn more people out like we've had when we were talking to the police and fire department previously, before we funded those 6 positions. So that's all I have right now, just right offhand. Those are the 2 things that have been kind of pressing to me. Thank you.
Okay, Tom, did you want to comment on
I'll
that?
just jump right off of what she just said. I mean, my number 1 has been the staffing for Park and Rec. I think we've heard that many times. Disappointed that we weren't able to find some kinds of funds this year to kind of put a Band-Aid on it, if you will. But I also, I'm worried about staff burnout, where I know that they're working a lot, and we are returning to, hopefully into the black. So we don't want to go backwards. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind just reading this, is finding a way to increase funding for Park and Rec, even if it means maybe a deficit in some other departments to offset that. I mean, sometimes what we've had in the past as well, we might have to cut in some other areas, or maybe across the board, to fund some of the Park and Rec. Because I think right now that's probably in my opinion, the most bleeding department. We took care of police and fire. I mean, not that they're where they need to be, but I think we've done a lot in the last couple of years with that. And we've tried to bend over backwards. But I think now we need to also look, as Diane said, and I was just going to, you told me exactly what I was going to say, so I appreciate it. Like, I think the message is we need to find some additional resources for Park and Rec, or we're going to have some bigger issues than we have today. That's my first thought.
Thank you for that. Anyone from this side? Oh, go ahead, Alder Stokes. We'll just go down that way then.
I agree that we do need to look at Park and Rec. I have a problem though with kind of the wording. Public safety may not always be first priority. I personally think that we need to keep public safety of all the departments, not just police and fire, but anyone else who does anything that could in some way jeopardize them going home at night. I think that needs to come first. I also know through conversations with all the employees at Park and Rec, both inside the office and at events, that they are the most resilient group of people that I have met. And I agree that they're putting in a lot of hours, but they also seem to have a really good outlook on what they're trying to do for the community. And that comes into play too. So I would love to find a way to do both. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Stevens.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've 5 points I'd like to have considered for the upcoming budgetary year. The first has to do with equity on payroll. If you remember the process that we went through after the wage study, and we had to find money to try to fund as much as we could up to par. And I think we were a little bit short. So I think our first priority is to kind of pick up the torch where we left it from last year. And to do that, which a little further down on the memo, we have a few options. And given that we're going into an extraordinarily high inflationary year, where the normal COLA and step increases are a little bit more aggressive than what we've had in the past, I think we should consider not wiping out, but restraining those avenues until we bring the bottom rung up of the people that we have identified as being underpaid. We want to bring that up to par. The second item has been touched on, is we want to address staffing shortfalls and I would say parks and the Omni Center. The Omni Center is a enterprise fund, and as Alder Wolf had pointed out, that's operating in the black. So I think we may have a little bit more opportunity there to expand or make the man hours a little bit more flexible, that between Mr. Wick and Justin, that they can manage that they can manage to keep the Omni Center operating at peak hours and avoid burnout. I would love it if we could get more hours in the Parks Department, but until we get some better numbers, or if our net new construction comes, fabulous, that's going to be, in my mind, I think it's going to be very difficult to do that unless we start making some cuts, potentially staffing cuts in other departments, and that's not direction I want to go. So far, it sounds like we're unanimous that this is where the greatest needs are. Given the general macroeconomic environment, I would love to get more help for parks, because they did take the biggest cut, and they've been doing a lot with a little bit of resources that we've given them, and I don't expect that they're going to be able to do that forever, but they've done a great job. The third point is I want to address the long-term financial viability of the Omni Center. I really want to avoid a future scenario where we are, where right now we're operating in the black, but in the future, if we're not, there is a fund that kind of protects the general tax levy. And I know in the COVID year, our other communities that have operated a convention center have really taken the shorts and with the loss of revenue, and that got passed on to the taxpayers. I want to inoculate our taxpayers as much as possible. And the only way that we can do that is either make sure that we continue to operate in the black or beef up that fund. And you would do that through some of the revenue created from the enterprise fund. And if we are not, item 4 is if we're not having the ability to be expansive and create new programs or opportunities or projects, I think it's important that we stick to maintenance. If we can't build a new road, can we crack seal it? We should prioritize protecting our infrastructure as much as we can to get through the high inflationary environment. And then this is kind of not a must-have, but I think it's good to have flexibility. I know that there's a increasingly small bonus that municipalities get with the expenditure restraint, and it seems like it's getting kind of ridiculously low. Other municipalities use a model like, for example, Sun Prairie, where they alternate years where they sacrifice the expenditure restraint and kind of address their long-term financial needs. I don't know if this is the right year or if it's even the answer at all, but I think that we should explore any financial alternatives that we have. It might make it tougher next year, but if it solves some problems this year and makes us better off long-term, I'd like to see the numbers. So that would be my 5 points. I sympathize with the city administrator. It's going to be very difficult to do what we need to do this, or what we want to do, based off of even with very positive net new construction, the expenses from the increased salary and just general inflation is, I think, going to exceed what we would normally have for that increase. So not a fun year. There's never a fun year when you're dealing with budgets, but this one's tough.
Okay, thank you, Alder Stevens. Alder Jurassic?
Sounds like there's a steady drumbeat tonight about Parks Department, and I can fully support that. Being a new guy on the block here, every organization needs more people most of the time. I got a call from my daughter the other day. She says, "Dad, I'm going home to have a glass of wine because I had a rough day." I said, "Well, what happened?" She said, "I had to fire 120 people today." And so it just put into reality what's out there. We may have to do some cuts with personnel. I don't know. We haven't gotten in those numbers, but she works for a major bank and they're cutting back drastically because the economy is pretty lousy right now. And I can fully understand your position as far as having to possibly make those decisions in the near future. The only thing I've been hearing a lot here is maintenance on the buildings, the air conditioner and stuff like that. And those are things that we have to address because we're looking at, 30 months out in some cases of trying to get the equipment in. So it's something we have to do right now. The only other thing that I would really like to see is something with the acoustical engineer in here. It's kind of like my pet project right now. But other than that, that's all I have, Mayor.
What was that last thing you said, Larry? I'm sorry.
Acoustical engineer.
Okay,
Piece of
acoustical,
like
yes.
acoustical.
Now I understand what you're saying.
Been that way.
Didn't
I
hear
was
it
not
either.
making a joke. I really didn't hear what he said.
That was my point though, yes. And then that's why, honestly, that's why I have my laptop, because when we went ahead and spent all the money, ARPA money, and did this last thing, this is when it just went to crap, quite frankly. It's awful to hear in here. When the microphones aren't on, like in closed session, we can hear everyone crystal clear, but whatever, there's this echo and it's awful from where I sit.
Yeah, I can, listen, I barely hear you.
But when I've sat over there, like at A and J, you know, and then I can hear Eric perfectly when he's talking. But when I'm sitting here, I can't hear a damn thing I'm sorry, I can't hear a thing you're saying. And then when it transcribes it, it gets most of it, but sometimes it turns people's names into something really interesting and some words that make no sense. And this just has to be resolved. So I thank you, Larry. This is really
Yeah.
bad.
Agreed.
And if I just may.
Sure, go ahead.
I apologize. I just wanted to just state for the record, and I went back and looked at what I said, just to follow up with what the Alder Stokes. I'm not, my position always is to support public safety, and past councils have always done that. And I will continue to do that. But when you look at past budgets and you look at the pieces of the pie, there's all these other departments that also have to function, because we are not just here. Yes, police and fire. I think typically, most people think that's at the top, but there's all these other departments that also function here to serve our citizens, and they have to have that some part of the pie also. And that was my only point. So thank you.
Sure. Okay. Alder Stokes?
And I know that you always have supported. My point was simply that I don't think that the public safety feature ever should take a backseat, no matter what department it is. And it's not just police and fire. There's a lot of things that are done in the public works area, there's, safety factors. And so my thinking is it needs to be safety first.
Mhm.
And not always doing it at the expense of the other departments, but in conjunction with the other departments.
Yep.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, let's move on then to question 2. Are there any current programs in the budget that you would like to see increased or decreased for next year? Alder Stokes?
There is one that I was speaking to a department head, and I had asked him if this would be possible. What I'm talking about is when a developer comes in for a new development and they give a certain area of land for the park. In the past, I don't think they have had to do anything else except give the land. That they don't have to actually develop it in any way at all. The department head had told me that there is the new development out on Sand Lake, where the developer is going to develop a series of trails and other things to make it so that the city doesn't have to be responsible for doing that, to make it a viable park area. I would like to see that developed more and have them have more responsibilities other than just giving a plot of land, and as part of their development costs.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other programs they would like to see increased or decreased? We're talking about programs. Alder Stevens?
I would like to support the continuance of the watering program for the flower baskets, and with the caveat that the cost of the watering is borne by the 501c3 group centering on Alaska. Would like that not to go away.
Thank you. Any other programs anyone would like to comment on? Okay, not seeing anyone. So did you want attention? Okay, item 3, do you have any preferred methodology for implementing increases or decreases? And then the examples are listed there. What makes the most sense to the counselors? Alder Stevens?
I think we should strongly avoid any decreases in positions. I think it's the better way to handle this is if everyone shares the pain, then nobody gets particularly hornswoggled. And the way that we would do that is by controlling or taking a more conservative approach on both the COLA and the performance pay increases.
Okay, Alder Smith.
Yeah, I agree with Alder Stevens. I think that, I don't want to see any staff reductions. We've been through that. But I understand what you're saying, Larry. Sometimes push comes to shove. That's always an option, but hopefully it will be one of our last options. I think it just causes a lot of ripple effects. We want to keep good employees and keep good morale. And when you start going down that path, it can be a rocky road. But I look at some of the things, I think if we do anything to be fair across the board cuts is my preference. That's what I'm used to doing. If we have to come up with some money, looking at it across the board from a fairness perspective, knowing that there may be a few exceptions, but we definitely have to sort that out. I definitely think reducing the COLA adjustment, reducing performance pay improvements increases is definitely an area we could look at, as much as I wouldn't like to do that. But I think staff reduction should be the last resort. And of course, in revenue enhancements, I don't know what that is, but if there's any way we can start finding more ways to bring in more money that we don't have today and brainstorm some suggestions there, they might help offset some of these deficiencies. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alder Stokes.
I agree that we don't want to be doing staff cutting. And I agree that maybe looking at the COLA adjustments is a good thing. I'm not really in favor of reducing performance pay increases simply because when you tell somebody that I want you to do a really good job, but the performance staff increases go away. I would prefer to use the COLA and not to use the performance.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alder Jurassic.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everybody saying in that it is going to be a tough decision to determine whether or not to cut COLA down and keep people on or try to keep COLA up. So it's a decision that's going to be pretty tough going this next year. I'd like to see a program where we could have a staff member do a lot more grants. Grants would bring in additional funding. There's so many different grants out there that you almost need a specialist to come in and look at that procedure. I mean, for any type of grant that's out there, we really don't know. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else about the methodology? Alder Wolf.
Your Honor, yeah, I can't say I disagree with anything that all other 5 alders have stated. City of Onalaska has always been a very lean organization, and I do not foresee us. I would prefer that we are not looking at any cuts or anything. And as far as revenue enhancements, I'm assuming that would be increase in fees is what is code word for that. So, but that's the next page. So yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on number 3? Okay, we'll move on to number 4 then. Any general goal statement that you would like to have as a guide? General goal. Yes, sir.
I think as this year's budget is trying to hold down the mill rate, as much. And I know we'll have to see when we get there, but one of the things that this council has since I've been is very sensitive to increasing taxes. Property taxes is one of the biggest things we hear about. If you're a homeowner and with now everything going up and now reappraising, I have a feeling we're going to hear a lot more noise when people get their new assessments. So I think that anything we can do to keep that mill rate very conservative will be a plus, because we may have to do that just to for the benefits of our property owners and people who are paying taxes to support our services. So And that's our goal this year, is to minimize the mill rate, not to exceed it to a certain percentage. I don't know what that'll be. I think it's 2%. I think this year, I believe you no more than 2% or something like that. I can't remember the exact, but something like that is the mill rate has to always be looking at what impact of whatever we do with the mill rate. And if it's going to increase the mill rate significantly or to a point where we can and can't, I think we have to be sensitive to that.
Well, with the revaluation, the mill rate really technically shouldn't probably
It
rise.
shouldn't.
We would expect actually a negative mill rate, maybe perhaps.
So we're gonna be
the
held-
administrator could comment.
Eric, would you want to just describe how that works for
timing
everyone
be
who's
for this year?
listening between the mill rate and the
Yeah.
expenditure restraints and everything?
In general, the mill rate is one that we have the least amount of control over. It's the net dollar amounts that you levy. In most years, if your properties are not being reassessed, any increase in tax will increase your mill rate because you're just dividing out your total number of taxes by your total valuation to get your rate per thousand. In this particular year with the assessments hitting, you're right, people will start seeing more assessments on the mill rate, but the budget being the same, which should actually drive the mill rate down as more value comes in. The pie stays the same size, but it adds volume to that pie, even though it hasn't changed. So your slice would actually decrease in rising costs. The problem is as how the property tax bills go out, what often happens is that one of the taxing entities will have a decrease in taxes, and this has happened to the city over several times over the last several years. But other taxing entities may have tax increases. Well, you only get one tax bill when you pay your taxes, and less than a third of that is your city tax bill. And so you can do great work and reduce the mill rate, but overall, their final mill rate may increase and tax bill may increase that way. So it's a goofy number to play with, and it's something though that is something to target because while we don't control it, well, the valuations are controlled. We can't control that number by being conservative with our budget numbers.
Okay, any other comments about goal statements? Alder Stokes.
When I was canvassing, one of the questions that I asked individuals is, what do you like the best about living in Unalaska, or why did you move to Unalaska? By far, the services that they were given is what they said, and the quality of life that they can maintain. So I think those two things, even though they're not monetary things, there still should be in the back of people's minds, because that's what the citizens are talking about. Now, if their taxes have to rise to keep the level of services the same, or if they don't want the level of services to stay and they're willing to accept less services, but don't have the taxes go up. That's, you can't sometimes have both. But that is a general sentiment that I had from throughout the time that I was out there.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for sharing that. Any other talk about goal statement? Okay. So we can go to the back then. For any other comments on any of these other things? Anything anyone hasn't said so far?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Alder Smith?
I'm just wondering, maybe Eric, are there any programs that are really in the red that we really need to scrutinize and look at even further? When you look across all of our programs, I know we just talked about the Omni Center starting to turn around, but are there other programs within our city that are really draining resources or money that we should at least, not that we're eliminate them or change them, but we should look at them and do a drill down on them?
In general, in 2022, our budget is doing quite well. We're balanced. We only have a third of the year in, really, or a quarter of the year in at this point in time, but we seem to be trending very well. Some of that is while we are in inflationary and some of our expenses will go up. that's going to be across the board. Everybody has some level of expenses that aren't. So every department, police, fire, utilities use fuel. Those costs are increasing. That what may lead us to problems going forward. But that, again, that's not program specific. That's across the board.
Okay.
Personnel, individual departments. We've had some leaves and some sick time that were not budgeted for that may impact where we are in personnel. But again, I think that's a one-off. It's not a general guidance that we have certain departments that are bleeding red faster than any other departments. The concern is less than 2022. I mean, there is a concern. We may have to come back hopefully as things get more expensive or lead times extend, and we don't have to come back to council and ask for a budget amendment. It's that jump as we approach item that we'll be discussing in closed session, contracts coming up, as well as the rest of the wages and benefit costs in 2023. But again, to my mind, that's going to be more across the board than is any individual program.
Eric, I have a quick question. We readjusted a lot of the fees last year. Have we seen a positive budgetary impact from that?
We did adjust the fees. I think net we're positive on those. Some, keep in mind, we did decrease when we did the special events permits, for example. We decreased overall more of a flat fee for that. But I think net we're trending up. Certain departments like inspection, we're definitely trending up. So with the adjusted fees.
Okay. Alder Stokes.
I'm not sure where this would actually land, but it's something that I wrote down that I heard at a meeting that I was at earlier today about how the respect that you have for an employee makes them actually feel and want to stay where they are. And I hadn't fleshed this out, but establishing some kind of a committee that has rotating staff members that give and it would be people that are not in supervisory positions. So and I'm not sure how many people this is, but at least to have them have an opportunity to express how they feel about where they work and what's good and what's not so good and what they think could change and things like that. It would take a lot of fleshing out, but I think that if you talk to people that sometimes don't have a voice because they're not in a supervisory position, or they just don't feel that way, it may sometimes flesh it out to the point where they feel satisfied.
Okay, so what I'm kind of hearing you say is that maybe one of the, going back to like a general goal statement would be to include employees in the process of determining if certain things need to be reduced in the budget?
Maybe not
or what?
Yeah. Well, I suppose you could put it in that area, because they actually live it every day. We're not full-time people, so we don't live it every day. So
I'm hearing employee
have a
involvement,
voice,
but I'm
have a
not hearing
voice.
like where that voice is supposed to come in.
well, maybe this is outside the budget.
Okay,
It could be just a goal, but maybe it's not going to actually fit into a budgetary item.
okay. Alder Wolf?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Amy's back there. So Amy might want to talk about this. So she's back there.
There she is. Maybe Amy can talk a little bit about, I believe it's called the Employee Engagement Team. And I'm kind of thinking that would be maybe right up their alley. And I have to say, before you comment, I have to say, when you first came out with this memo some months ago, and you and I have talked briefly about this, I was thrilled to hear about this. And I've just been very appreciative of the engagement of all the departments and all the people who are engaged. So if you give a little history and how long and all that, I think that would help.
Thank you. Please welcome Amy Franzen, our HR director.
And what you described is certainly our employee engagement team. It's newly formed as of October 2021. It's comprised of various employees. There are no supervisory or managerial staff on this team. I do attend those meetings, but more or less as just kind of a bystander and just to kind of help facilitate those meetings. But it is comprised of about 10 employees of all various departments, and they are that liaison, they are that spokesperson for that team. And they bring ideas, they review policies, they plan events, they have a lot of different ideas, a lot of things that are rolling. Again, we're newly formed, and so it's just sort of getting its feet on its ground. But it is a team that we bounce ideas off, the same way that we bounce ideas off when we have our department head meetings. So it is a voice, it is that liaison. And again, they're at various levels and integrated into the system, so.
So Amy, do you envision a way that that team could be used to help gauge what would have the least impact on employee morale if we are facing, when all the numbers come together, a difficult budget?
Absolutely. Again, this team is there to sort of be that spokesperson and to gather input from their departments and come up with some ideas. So again, when we're talking employee engagement, we're talking about how do we, when we have higher engaged employees, we have higher productivity, we have higher buy-in. And so there's a lot of gain to be had from higher employee engagement. And so whatever thoughts and feedback that they have, they bring it back to their spokesperson, and then they come together as a group and discuss that and come up with some ideas.
Thank you. Okay, Alder Smith, and then we'll go to Alder Jurassic.
Alex, just like Amy, do we rotate that? I know it's just new, it just started in October, but is the plan to kind of rotate people in and out there so that not just one department's person, but eventually, more people within the department could participate? Have we thought about that, or is that the plan?
I think right now we've got employees that are participating. If we ever get to a point where employees are not participating, we would look at, finding another replacement. I think the goal is to keep that team relatively small and not too large. But certainly if there's ever an employee interest that would like to be a member, we do put it out in our employee newsletter. We list who those employees are. We haven't had it formed for quite a year yet, so we haven't had those discussions about rotating staff just yet, but I imagine that will be something in the future.
Probably too early for that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. So thank you.
Thank you. Alder Jurassic.
Amy, is there going to be notes of these meetings that we can get a hold of?
We take very loose notes, but yeah, we do have at least some loose notes on those meetings and what's happening in those meetings. Certainly you can access those if you like that. I can certainly get those to you. No formal minutes or recordings or anything like that. Certainly anyone from this group is welcome to attend. They typically meet monthly. Their next meeting is scheduled for May 24th, I believe, at 1:30 or 2. I have to double check the time, but I know the next meeting is coming up next week.
So do you have an agenda when you go into these meetings, or?
There's an agenda, and each employee takes turns running that meeting, so to speak, creating that agenda. So each person sort of takes turns kind of leading those discussions in the group each month.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Alder Stokes.
Amy, just thank you, because that's exactly what I was envisioning. I did not, and being new here, I didn't know that you actually had something like that, but I think that that's going to go a long way in helping people understand what's going on, even though there might be things, with the budget that they don't like, at least they have a voice.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alder Stevens.
Thank you, Amy. This is a general question.
Thank you, Amy.
Or just maybe a statement, just thinking back on last year's budgetary process. I'd really like to avoid if we get to the point where there was a hole in the budget and then it kind of fell to council I felt like we kind of had to nitpick out of individual departments, GLs, and take, $50 out of, engineering's paper budget and then and get there. So if I don't know how we avoid that, but if it could be cleaner when it comes to us, I'd like to be in a position where council's not micromanaging the individual department budgets and having to take some of the flexibility that they have to move money in between departments and self-manage. So Just that's my general goal.
Thank you. Alder Smith?
Just one more question. And I asked Eric about the, programs that were in the red, and I think he answered it pretty well. Right now, we're doing okay. But are there any departments that we could maybe consider outsourcing in the long run that would and ultimately be cheaper? And again, that has a lot of ramifications, but I'm just, I know that outsourcing or having someone else do it on behalf of the city, I don't know what that means, but it comes up a lot. And I just thought I'd throw that out and see if there's any thoughts of that from any departments. I know the Omni Center, there's been discussion about that, like down at La Crosse Center. Just any thoughts on that or any avenues that we could at least look at?
Sure, for privatizing. Ultimately, the answer is anything that can be done in the private sector, or there's something being done in the private sector to cover that would be the best way to do that. Then the equation then comes to, can you get somebody from the private sector to do the tasks, the same amount of hours, same amount of tests you have to do at the same cost that we pay otherwise. But really, that's anything from administrator to on down to even, public safety. If you really want to look at it, it's anything that we do can be, examined to find it, is there a more effective way, cost-effective way of doing so? Every department, nothing specifically comes to mind in terms of this is an obvious one. The ones that we looked at are the ones that we had private sector coming to us with proposals, and that would have been inspection in the last several years. If you may recall that we had a much larger department that way. And even more recently, we privatized out that way for plan review that we are now getting revenue from by the private sector. And those are the ones that, that when we are made aware of someone that can do those things on our behalf, that we can contract out.
Okay.
And I'll continue to bring.
Sorry, throw it
plans
out
to
as a
you.
question to think about.
Absolutely.
Okay, so part of the reason we're doing this is so there's no big surprises. Everything's out on the table. Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? Eric, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
I'll sum up. A very good picture. Thank you for what we're looking at. Again, we weren't going to have a balanced budget this evening, but really was to get to the heart of what's the philosophy of this body. So when I present a budget to you, it's something, as Dan, you mentioned, you can approve or you can disapprove, that you don't have to go in and, and look at individual line item budgets, but it fits your overall philosophy of what you're looking for. Some of the items we've heard multiple times, Park and Rec, public safety, that we've heard about that one. And you've also been very clear when it comes to any shortfalls, it's maintaining the staff we have, but looking at ways of being conservative when it comes to any wage increases. So I think that sums up, overall what you're looking for, which I greatly appreciate, and that certainly helps. We will have a discussion at some of those topics in closed session again, that'll impact where we are when it comes to our unions. So we're not quite done with this topic right now, but I appreciate the input that you've given me.
And I do think too, once we have the numbers, we'll have to explore the expenditure restraint limit and different options that we may or may not have there. Cost-effective options. Okay. Thank you everyone for that discussion. Item 5 is closed session. To consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 19.85, paragraph 1, paragraph C, excuse me, of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data for any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically the goals for the city administrator. And also to consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 19.85, paragraph 1, paragraph E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting of other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Specifically, the 2023 contract negotiations for the AFF, International Association of Firefighters, Local 127, the OPPA, the Onalaska Professional Police Association, the SORD, the SWORD, Supervisory Officers Relation Division. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, the council will reconvene in open session to take the necessary action and or continue on with the printed agenda. Is there a motion?
Your Honor, I move that we go to closed session.
Diane seconds.
I have a motion by Alder Stevens, seconded by Alder Wolf to go into closed session. Please answer When your name is called, if you would like to go into closed session.
Diane Wolf,
Aye.
Dan Stevens,
I.
Stephen Knott, I'm sorry, absent, Tom Smith,
Aye.
Larry Jurassic,
Aye.
Leanne Stokes.
Aye.
Okay, we are in closed session. The time is 8:05 PM. Does